"You called us replaceable," Daniel Mercer said. Behind him, hundreds of looms stood silent. Duke Marcus Halewood held a torn section of the Queen's tapestry in both hands. Gold thread hung from the fabric like broken wire, and his family crest had twisted upside down along the ruined seam. "The Royal Council has given me 30 days to repair it." Daniel looked across the empty cooperative workshop. "You dismissed the people who knew how. I will restore every position. You believe employment is respect because unemployment was your punishment." Marcus placed the damaged fabric on the cutting table. "What will it cost?" Ruth Mercer opened a worker's charter and pushed it towards him. "Not what." Her eyes remained fixed upon the Duke. "Who gets to decide?" 10 months earlier, Halewood had been dying slowly. Its name still carried prestige in London drawing rooms, but the estate's weaving villages were losing orders to larger factories. Old workshops closed every winter. Skilled workers left for Manchester and Leeds. Young apprentices saw little reason to spend years learning a craft when machine operators earned wages almost immediately. Marcus refused to accept decline as inevitable. He had inherited an estate famous for woven histories, ceremonial banners, and tapestries that hung in royal residences. He intended to transform that heritage into modern industry. The opportunity came with a commission from the Royal Arts Council. Halewood was invited to create an enormous tapestry commemorating the Queen's Jubilee. It would depict the crown at its center, surrounded by the regions, trades, and institutions of the kingdom. If successful, Halewood would receive the royal mark. Every noble house in England would want its cloth. Every embassy would request its work. Marcus gathered investors inside the largest weaving hall and unveiled his plan beneath rows of newly installed looms. "This commission will not preserve Halewood as a relic," he declared. "It will establish Halewood as the future." The workers applauded. Duchess Arabella stood beside him. She had supported the purchase of modern machinery. The old looms demanded immense physical labor and produced too little to keep the villages employed. But Arabella also knew that machines could not reproduce every part of the craft. Neither could Marcus. Daniel Mercer understood that better than anyone. Daniel was 61 and had worked in Halewood's tapestry room since childhood. He had trained dyers, pattern makers, and loom operators. He had introduced measuring frames that reduced wasted yarn and adapted traditional designs for mechanical production. He did not hate modern looms. He knew exactly where they were useful. During the first planning meeting, he spread the tapestry designs across a long oak table. "The background fields may be produced mechanically," he said. "The borders as well. The repeated heraldic patterns will be faster and more consistent." Marcus nodded impatiently. "And the portraits?" "Finished by hand. That will take too long. A face is not a repeated border. The machines can follow a pattern. They can follow lines. They cannot correct expression when the tension changes." Mr. Edwin Prentice, the manufacturing advisor, examined the plans. "Mr. Mercer is correct. The machinery should carry the volume. The skilled rooms should carry the detail." Marcus looked at the completion schedule. Daniel had allowed 18 months. Marcus had promised the Royal Council 10. "We do not have time for 2 separate systems." Daniel pointed towards the central portrait. "Then we do not have time to repair what one system may damage." Marcus disliked the certainty in his voice. It sounded less like advice than limitation. The first months appeared to vindicate Marcus. Production accelerated. Mechanical looms created vast sections of background in days rather than weeks. Investors toured the factory and watched patterns emerge with extraordinary speed. Marcus expanded the night shifts. He ordered more workers hired and shortened training periods. The reports pleased him. Output increased. Costs fell. The royal deadline seemed achievable. The problems began quietly. One batch of crimson yarn dried several shades darker than the previous one. A section of the northern border contracted after being removed from its frame. The central panels did not align perfectly because different teams had worked at different tensions. Daniel requested 6 weeks to correct the faults. Marcus refused. "You are measuring the work by the standards of a village workshop. I am measuring it by whether it remains intact. We cannot stop production every time a shade differs. A shade may be corrected. Uneven tension may tear the whole center." Marcus looked towards the rows of active looms. "You see, risk, because risk protects your importance." Daniel's expression hardened. "No, Your Grace. I see thread." Arabella began visiting the factory without announcement. She spoke to dyers during their breaks and examined the workers' hands. Many had developed cuts where the yarn caught against dry skin. Several women were working 14-hour shifts. Apprentices were being moved between looms before learning one task properly. A mother named Elsie Crane showed Arabella a rent notice. "My husband refused an extra night shift," she said. "The supervisor told us the cottage belongs to the mill." The notice stated that continued tenancy depended upon full cooperation with production requirements. Arabella brought it to Marcus. "You tied their homes to overtime. The estate provides both wages and housing. Then refusal costs them twice. The commission has a deadline. So hunger and homelessness are now part of your schedule." Marcus put down his pen. "You make every commercial decision sound like cruelty. You make every cruelty sound like administration." He stood. "The workers know the terms. They know they have nowhere else to go." Daniel's final refusal came over the central portrait. The panel containing the Queen's face had been joined to the surrounding cloth before the yarn had fully settled. The seam pulled slightly to the left. It was barely visible while the tapestry lay flat. Daniel knew it would worsen when suspended. He ordered the section removed. Marcus arrived before the work began. "What are you doing?" "Taking the portrait apart. It has already passed visual inspection. Flat on a factory floor. It appears complete. It is not stable." Marcus looked towards the supervisors and investors touring the upper gallery. "How long?" 6 weeks. "Impossible." "Then do not ask me to certify it." Marcus lowered his voice. "The Royal Council requires a technical signature. Then give them mine when the work is sound. You are the only man delaying the entire commission." Daniel looked towards the strained seam. "I am the only man whose name you require when it fails." Marcus called an emergency meeting with the investors. Daniel was summoned before them. On the table lay the certification form. Marcus spoke with deliberate restraint. "You will sign approval for the completed sections." "No, the faults are cosmetic. The central tension is uneven. Mr. Prentice has confirmed the machinery is operating within specification." Edwin shifted uncomfortably. "The machinery is... the combined fabric remains untested." Marcus ignored him. The Crown commissioned a tapestry from Halewood, not a monument to the pride of village weavers. Daniel met his gaze. "Then Your Grace should ask whether Halewood is a name or the people who give that name value." A silence settled over the room. Marcus saw investors looking between them. He heard the challenge not as technical disagreement, but as a public claim that the estate belonged morally to its laborers rather than its duke. A factory cannot be governed by every worker's opinion, nor can a tapestry be woven by a duke's order alone. Marcus's restraint broke. A weaver is a pair of hands. When one pair refuses to work, another may replace it. Daniel did not raise his voice. Then ask those new hands to remember 40 years they never lived. Marcus dismissed him immediately. The punishment did not end at the factory gate. Daniel's cottage belonged to the estate. So did his workshop and the old frame on which he had trained generations of apprentices. He received 6 weeks to leave. Marcus prohibited Halewood Mills from rehiring him. Workers who protested were told their cottages could also be reclaimed. Ruth Mercer stood in the yard while estate officers marked her grandfather's looms for removal. Arabella arrived before the final wagon left. "You should have told me sooner," she said. Daniel gave a tired smile. "Your Grace, I was dismissed in a room full of men who believed the Duke owned the truth. I can arrange another house. He will call it interference. Let him." Daniel studied her. "Do not save us privately while he destroys us publicly." The words stayed with Arabella. She still helped Ruth lease an abandoned workshop beyond the Halewood boundary. But she no longer pretended private assistance could repair public contempt. Inside the main factory, production accelerated again. Without Daniel, no one wanted responsibility for stopping a loom. Supervisors rewarded speed. Workers concealed errors. One dyer noticed the crimson yarn bleeding into the white heraldic lions. She said nothing. A young loom operator found that 2 panels had contracted differently. He covered the joining line with decorative thread. A senior worker requested time to re-stretch the central section. Her bonus was removed for delaying output. The lesson spread quickly. Do not report faults. Do not sign objections. Do not become the next family ordered from its home. Marcus saw the completion figures and believed discipline had succeeded. He did not see that skill was leaving the factory even when the workers remained inside it. The finished tapestry was magnificent while lying flat. It filled the entire assembly hall. The Queen's portrait occupied the center beneath a canopy of gold. Around her appeared ships, farms, courts, workshops, and regimental banners. The Halewood crest sat prominently beneath the throne. Investors praised its scale. Reporters called it a triumph of modern production. Marcus turned towards Arabella. "The tapestry is complete." Daniel was wrong. Arabella knelt beside the lower edge and touched a seam. It is complete when it survives being displayed. She cut a small sample from surplus cloth and took it to the factory's heated drying room. Within hours, the red dye began to bleed. The backing tightened. Decorative stitches lifted away from the seam. Arabella carried the sample to Marcus. He examined it and pushed it aside. This came from surplus material. It came from the same dye batch. The full tapestry has been inspected by supervisors who lose wages if it is delayed. Marcus stood. "The unveiling is in 3 days. Postpone it, and announce to every investor that my wife believes the work unsafe. Announce that Halewood values the work enough to test it properly. You have spent months looking for the failure Daniel predicted." "No, I spent months hoping not to find it," he refused. The unveiling took place beneath hundreds of lamps in the Royal Arts Hall. Nobles, journalists, manufacturers and government officials filled the room. The workers who had woven the tapestry were not seated among the honored guests. Their names did not appear in the official program. Only the factory, Its investors and Duke Marcus Halewood received credit. Lady Miriam Ashford of the Royal Arts Council stood near the front. Marcus addressed the assembly. This work proves that tradition need not fear industry. At his signal, the coverings were lowered. The tapestry appeared. For a moment, the hall was silent with admiration. Then the applause began. Marcus looked towards Arabella. She was not watching the audience. She was watching the central seam. Heat from the lamps rose against the hanging cloth. The left panel tightened first. The right followed more slowly. A single gold thread snapped beneath the Queen's portrait. Arabella heard it. Then another broke. The decorative border lifted. A seam opened from the lower center and traveled upward through the royal robes. Gasps replaced applause. Marcus stepped towards the tapestry. The Halewood crest tore free and fell at his feet. Above it, the two central panels contracted in opposite directions. The Queen's face twisted sharply across the widening gap. A length of crimson fabric collapsed from the frame. Lady Miriam walked forward through the silence. Lower it immediately. Workers rushed to release the supporting ropes. The damaged tapestry sagged across the platform. Marcus opened the technical portfolio with trembling hands. Lady Miriam asked, "Who certified this work?" Daniel's signature was absent. No master weaver had signed. No dyer had accepted responsibility for the unstable colors. No worker's name appeared anywhere. The only approval was Marcus's written command. "Proceed without delay." Lady Miriam read it. Then she looked at him. "Then the Duke who refused every warning may sign for the failure as well." Before the entire court, she removed the royal seal from Halewood's commission. The hall stood silent as the crest Marcus had placed at the center of the tapestry lay torn and upside down at his feet. The Royal Arts Hall remained silent after Lady Miriam removed the seal. Marcus stood beneath the damaged tapestry while officials folded the commission papers away from him. The Halewood crest lay on the floor. No one moved to return it. Lady Miriam closed the technical portfolio. The Royal Council will allow 30 days for Halewood to present a credible restoration plan. Marcus looked at the torn portrait. "We can repair it." "Who is we?" "My factory." "Your factory produced this." Her voice was not cruel. That made the humiliation worse. "You may submit a new plan," she continued, "but it must be certified by recognized master weavers and independent dyers. Until then, Halewood's royal privilege is suspended." Several investors rose before the meeting formally ended. They did not confront Marcus. They simply left. The newspapers reached Halewood before the damaged tapestry did. Royal portrait torn at unveiling. Duke's order replaced technical approval. H. Halewood crest falls before the court. By the time Marcus returned, 3 major clients had cancelled their orders. A military supplier suspended negotiations. Merchants delayed payment on existing contracts. The factory continued operating for 2 days. Then the yarn deliveries stopped. Workers arrived for the morning shift and found several looms silent. Supervisors had no instructions. Marcus summoned the remaining master weavers. "Which of you can lead the restoration?" No one answered. He selected a senior loom operator. "You worked on the central border." "Yes, Your Grace." "Then you understand its construction." "I understand my section." "Who understands the whole?" The man looked towards the empty place where Daniel's desk had stood. Marcus dismissed him from the room before realizing the answer had already been given. Arabella entered the factory that afternoon. Workers gathered near the closed looms. Some feared dismissal. Others feared losing their cottages before winter. A woman approached Arabella with a rent notice. "Are these still valid?" Arabella read the estate seal. The document threatened eviction if employment ended for any reason. She carried it directly to Marcus. "You will cancel these. The factory cannot provide housing without wages. The factory stopped because of your decision. We have lost the royal commission." "You lost the commission. They did not." Marcus was exhausted, but exhaustion had not yet removed his instincts. If every wage and tenancy continues while production is suspended, Halewood will collapse. Then sell something that belongs to you. His eyes hardened. "You think this is the moment for punishment?" "No. This is the moment when you discover whether the risk belonged to everyone or only the reward did." Marcus traveled to Ruth's cooperative the following morning. The building had once been a furniture warehouse. Its roof was patched. Its walls were plain. Inside, the looms were smaller than those at Halewood, but every station was active. Workers discussed color samples openly. A young apprentice stopped a loom after noticing uneven tension. No supervisor threatened her. Daniel stood beside a stretching frame. Marcus placed the torn royal fabric on the work table. "The council has given me 30 days. Daniel examined the seam without touching it. "The center must be dismantled." "How long?" 4 months if the original yarn can be matched. "I have 30 days. "Then you have 30 days to tell the truth." Marcus unfolded a bank draft. "I will restore your position and pay double your former salary." Daniel looked at the paper. "You still believe the problem is the price of our hands? What else do you require?" Ruth placed a document before him. It was not a repair estimate. It was a worker's charter. Marcus read the first section. No employee could lose housing for refusing unsafe or dishonest production. No technical approval could be replaced by ducal instruction. Every major work required named responsibility from the dyer, designer, loom operator, and master weaver. Workers could halt production when quality standards failed. The cooperative would remain independent from Halewood ownership. Marcus looked up. "You are asking me to surrender management of my own mills." "We are asking you to stop treating management as ownership of everyone's judgment," Ruth said. Daniel added, "You may control the building. You may not command thread to become stable." Marcus returned without an agreement. He spent the evening reviewing the estate accounts. The numbers offered no path that preserved both his authority and Halewood's survival. The Royal Commission had been intended to rescue the mills. Its failure now threatened every village dependent upon them. He could close the factory and preserve what remained of the family fortune. Or he could sell personal property, protect wages, and accept the charter. For years, Marcus had believed leadership meant ensuring that every decision passed through him. Now every available choice required him to give up control. Arabella found him near midnight. The estate accounts covered the desk. "You went to Daniel?" "Yes." "And?" "They want a council with power to stop production. They needed that power before the Tapestry tore. They want the cooperative to remain independent. It should. They want workers' names entered into every commission." "Were you planning to repair the Queen's face without naming the people who repaired it?" Marcus leaned back. "You speak as though nothing belongs to Halewood. The walls belong to Halewood. The looms belong to Halewood. Their skill does not. I built the modern factory, and they made it produce something worth buying." He looked at her. "You knew the sample failed." "Yes. You still attended the unveiling." "I believed you might stop it when you saw the seam." "You should have gone directly to Lady Miriam." "Yes, The admission disarmed him. Arabella continued. I tried to manage around your pride. I kept evidence private because I still hoped to protect the commission, the workers, and our marriage at once. Could you have prevented this? I might have prevented the public unveiling. Marcus waited. She did not offer to share the rest of the blame. But you ordered the work continued, she said. You removed the people who objected. You tied their homes to obedience. That was yours. The next morning, Marcus sold his hunting estate at Merrow Chase. He cancelled plans to renovate the London townhouse. He placed part of the family silver under commercial bond. The money funded 6 months of wages, preserved factory housing, and covered the first compensation payments. Then he returned to the cooperative. Daniel, Ruth, and representatives from the dismissed workers waited around the cutting table. Marcus placed the signed charter before them. I accept the terms. Ruth read every page. You altered nothing? No. Daniel looked at him. Why? Because the mills will not survive without you. That is necessity. Marcus looked around the workshop. I called you replaceable because I did not know how to admit that the work depended upon people I could not command into agreement. Daniel studied him for a long moment. That is closer. Lady Miriam granted Halewood permission to remove the damaged tapestry from the royal hall. The restoration team included Daniel, Ruth, independent dyers, and several workers Marcus had dismissed. Marcus was not permitted to supervise technical decisions. The first act was to dismantle nearly a third of the tapestry. Marcus watched months of rushed production being cut apart. Each concealed repair appeared beneath the gold thread. Each unstable dye batch had to be removed. Each hurried seam had spread tension into the panels beside it. The damage was worse than the visible tear. Daniel held up a section of the backing. This was patched 3 times. Marcus turned towards the supervisor, responsible. The man lowered his eyes. Why did you not report it? My daughter lives in a mill cottage. Marcus had no response. The silence inside the workshop became an accusation more precise than anything Daniel could have said. The restoration could not be completed within 30 days. Marcus appeared before the Royal Arts Council and requested an extension. Lady Miriam asked, "Can Halewood meet the original deadline?" No. Why not? Because the damage was concealed during production. By whom? By workers afraid to report it. And why were they afraid? Marcus looked towards the assembled council. Because I made employment, wages, and housing depend upon obedience. The admission was entered into the official record. The council granted 4 months. The royal privilege remained suspended. Halewood's factories reopened gradually. The new council included master weavers, dyers, machine operators, apprentices, housing representatives, estate officials. Arabella, 1 independent technical examiner. Marcus held a seat. He did not control the vote. The first serious dispute involved a military cloth order. A dye specialist rejected an entire batch because the color faded under moisture testing. The delay threatened a commercial penalty. Marcus felt the old response rise in him. He wanted to ask whether the defect could be concealed. Instead, he asked, "What happens if we use it?" "The color will fail in rain." "Then reject it." The batch was destroyed. The factory lost money. No one lost a home. Marcus apologized publicly in the main weaving hall. He stood below the workers' gallery rather than on the investors' platform. I called the people of Halewood hands because hands could be replaced. Daniel and Ruth stood among the workers. I praised labor when it increased my fortune, and called it insolence when it protected its own name. Marcus looked towards the empty frame where the damaged tapestry had once hung. I believed owning the factory made the work mine. It did not. Ownership gave me power over buildings, wages, and houses. I used that power to silence knowledge. He announced compensation for evicted families and repayment of wages lost through illegal penalties. Housing contracts were separated from production obedience. Technical objections would be public. No worker could be dismissed for refusing to certify defective work. There was no applause when he finished. Marcus did not ask for any. Arabella remained at Halewood, but she moved the Workers' Welfare Office out of the ducal administration. It became an independent trust. Marcus visited her after the new council's first month. "You no longer send reports through my office." "No. You believed I altered them." "I believed people should not have to complain about the Duke to a department controlled by the Duke." He accepted the answer. After a moment, he said, "I need your help restoring Halewood's reputation." Arabella closed the ledger. "Reputation is what you are still trying to save. Trust is what you destroyed. I am trying to repair both." "Then do not ask me to make the repair appear faster than it is." Marcus looked towards her. "What happens to our marriage?" It continues. "That sounds administrative. For now, it is honest. She did not leave him. She also did not reward reform with immediate tenderness. Marcus had to learn that affection, like certification, could not be ordered because a deadline approached. 4 months later, the restored tapestry returned to the Royal Arts Hall. The Queen's portrait had been completely rewoven. The colors had been tested under heat, moisture, and tension. Every seam carried a technical signature. Along the lower border, Ruth added something absent from the original design. Names: the dyers, the designers, the loom operators, the joiners, the apprentices. Daniel Mercer, Ruth Mercer, Elsie Crane, dozens of others. Marcus's name appeared once, in the same size as every other contributor, under estate patronage. Lady Miriam examined the border. "Was this approved by His Grace?" Ruth answered. "It was approved by the council." Lady Miriam looked towards Marcus. "And you accepted that?" "Yes." "Why?" Marcus looked at the names. "Because the first tapestry carried my name and none of their responsibility. The second should carry their names and none of my claim to mastery." The tapestry was raised slowly. This time, the hall was cooler. The suspension frame had been redesigned. Daniel watched every seam. Ruth monitored the center. The cloth settled into place. Nothing tore. The Queen's face remained balanced. The colors held. The Halewood crest no longer occupied the center. It appeared at the lower edge among symbols representing the workshops, schools, and villages that had produced the work. The applause began only after the workers confirmed the tension was stable. Marcus remained below the platform. Daniel and a young female apprentice stepped forward to receive the Royal Council's recognition. Halewood's privilege was restored not to Marcus personally, but to the certified collective of its workshops. 3 years later, the mills were producing more than before the failed commission. Not because workers were driven harder, because errors were reported early. Training improved. Machine operators remained long enough to master their work. Traditional techniques were preserved where they mattered. Mechanization handled volume. Craftsmanship protected quality. Ruth's cooperative remained independent and received part of every major Halewood commission. Marcus once would have called that divided authority. Now he called it protection against repeating his own certainty. Before a new diplomatic tapestry was unveiled, he attended the final council review. "Has every section been approved freely?" he asked. The dyers confirmed the colors. The loom operators confirmed the tension. Daniel inspected the seams. An apprentice raised one concern about a border panel. The unveiling was delayed. Marcus did not object. The panel was corrected. Only then did the council sign. Afterward, Marcus and Arabella walked through the restored weaving hall. Modern looms operated beside hand-finishing frames. Workers' names appeared beneath completed commissions. The sound of machinery filled the room, but no one had to shout to make a warning heard. "I once believed ownership made the work mine," Marcus said. Arabella looked towards an apprentice correcting a gold border. "Ownership gave you the building. Their labor gave it meaning. And trust? That belongs to the people who decide whether you have earned it." Marcus offered his hand. She looked at him for a moment before taking it. Halewood had not been rescued by rejecting industry. It was rescued when Marcus understood that efficiency without judgment produced only faster failure. A loom could repeat a pattern. A duke could issue an order. Neither could replace the accumulated knowledge of the people who knew when color would bleed, when thread would tighten, and when a seam would tear. The first tapestry failed because every worker had been taught to fear the consequences of speaking. The second endured because every name along its border belonged to someone who had the right to stop the work. And Marcus's authority became worthy of respect only after he stopped demanding that respect from people whose dignity he had once treated as replaceable.